All right, welcome back to an amazing episode of the Show Me Mo School Facilities Podcast. I'm your co-host Scott Dobson, and Josh Peach is joining us here. Today we got a special guest, Mr. Jim Rich, Director of Operations from the Park Hill School District, who is kind of closing out a career here of retirement. So wanted to pick his brain, see all the lessons that we can learn, all the rest of us can learn from a guy that has more experience and has probably learned more and forgot more than I'll ever learn. With that, gentlemen, I'll allow you to introduce yourselves and we'll kick this off.
Happy to be here. I'm excited. We had Jim on before his countdown to retirement. You were one of the first episodes, so welcome back, my friend. Or were you on the Show Me Mo, or were you on the Be Awesome at Facility Management?
Show Me Mo.
Yeah, that's right. So you're a seasoned veteran.
Yeah.
So this is Scott's third and your second. So you guys are like close to level experience.
Well, I appreciate you guys inviting me on. As Scott said, I'm Jim Rich, currently the Director of Operations for Park Hill School District for another 10 days.
Not that he's counted them down to the minute yet.
Well, he had down to the minute before we started, so he's got it.
Down to the minute. Well, Jim, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's led you to this great career path you've chosen at Park Hill, and what are some awesome memories for us?
Yeah, as I told the folks on the last podcast, my journey was a little unusual getting to this position. For a long time, I worked at UPS as a business manager. After that, I went to what was then Laidlaw Transportation, running school buses. That first student acquired Laidlaw many years ago, and was a manager of about 3 different facilities at once, 330 some buses at the time. During that time, I helped design a transportation facility for one of the school districts that I was working with. And about that time in Park Hill, where my kids grew up, where I lived and have lived almost all my time in Kansas City, I knew the director of operations here and ran into him. We were both together at an event, and he hinted to me that he may be retiring. This is probably Christmas time, something like that. And a few months later, in my mind, when he told me that, I'm like, that would be a pretty awesome job. And a district that, again, my kids were in and kind of already had some buy-in, for the Park Hill School District. Then a few months later, whatever it was, March or April, when he announced, I called the assistant superintendent for HR and said, hey, you think this might be a good fit for me? Don't know. And left him a voicemail at 6:00 in the morning as I was driving to my job down in Olathe, and didn't hear anything all day. So I was kind of bummed out, didn't hear from him. And then on the way home, he called me and said, hey, don't know, Jerry retired and superintendent and I were talking, and we think that maybe something we'd like for you to apply for. I said, are you returning my call? He said, I don't know what you're talking about. I never got your message. So the cool thing for me anyway was this, we were both kind of on the same page there, not even having any conversations beforehand about that. So, not that it wasn't still difficult to get the position, because, multiple panel interviews and that kind of stuff. That was started in July 2006, my 19th year. I've learned a ton of stuff that never knew anything about. I guess I had them snowed coming into the position, thinking I knew more than I did. And the job is really evolved over those years. Obviously, the district's grown, the department has grown, our tasks have grown, as you all know, even in the time that you've been, involved with this type of work too. So it's been interesting. I think, I've been asked this a lot lately. What's your favorite thing about Park Hill? What are you most proud of, or whatever? And we've all been involved in projects and things like that we're proud of and enjoyed working on. To me, no, and everybody says the people too, when they're leaving, are going to miss the people. And that's true for me as well. But what I'm proud of is, I think, I'll call it the atmosphere of the department. It's a cliche that people talk about, family atmosphere, but we truly have one here. And, I feel like at least I've been a small part of that. All but one person in the maintenance department I've hired, because I've been here long enough. So I kind of puffed my chest out a little bit because of that, and the great team that we have here that, again, at least I was a small part of that, at least their started their career here at Park Hill.
That is awesome. You hit on a couple big points there I want to circle back on. So you have designed 2 transportation facilities, because the one you have now is amazing. Hats off to you, because the transportation facility and your warehouse are probably some of the best I've ever seen, and I envy them. I want them.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's funny. The first one I quote unquote designed, I was the vendor for the district, and when they bought the property and were going to design or build the facility, they came to me and said, "Well, we want you involved. I mean, you're going to be the ones operating now that facility, so we want to know what you think." I just took a piece of drafting paper and drew it out, and that's what they built. Like, holy crap! I had no idea that's what they were going to do. I was just trying to give an example of what I thought should happen, But that's exactly the way they designed it and built it. So surprised me.
Hats off. That's super cool.
Well,
So what is your average?
That's a testament for having the people that are going to be using the space to be at the table to help design the space. There is another testament to that, because too often that doesn't happen, right? People smarter than us sit in a room, they design something, and then they expect us to manage, maintain, and oversee it. And it's, there's a lot of things that can be missed because of the day-to-day that, what we have for experience. So
that's absolutely, yeah. Josh, it's spot on. It's awesome. With that, so your average maintenance person then? So like what's your average years of service for most of those guys? It sounds like pretty experienced. Sounds pretty experienced is for what I'm getting. And they stay with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I say I've hired everybody, and most of that's through attrition. People retire and leave. I mean, I've got one guy started this week, and I have one that's retiring a couple weeks after I am that I hired. So all in between. The one that I haven't hired or did not hire was here when I got here, has been here 30 plus years. So it's all over the board, really, for all the trades guys.
That's awesome. How do you approach building that team? How can we learn from that? Because you've assembled, from what I'm gathering, the best team in the state.
Well, I think a little of it goes to what Peach was talking about, having them involved in a lot of different things. I mean, and Scott, I'm sure you do this too when you're meeting with our construction folks and architects, to have them at the table, have the plumbers, electricians, carpenters, et cetera, and going through the page turns, for the plans and making sure they're getting eyes on, involving them during the process, having them come in before ceilings are covered up, walls are covered up, and so they see what's going on and see the work that they looked at and approved, to make sure, and not just doing it to appease them. It's not a dog and pony show. We really value their input. I'm not an electrician. I'm not a plumber. I'm not an HVAC guy. I rely on those experts to give the feedback and help make the decisions and, on the different pieces of that. And just the day-to-day thing too, not just designing buildings, but, when we're looking at replacing HVAC, my HVAC supervisor and the folks on his team are intimately involved in making those decisions and recommendations to me to move forward. Same thing with all the trades, even the mechanics and the grounds guys, when we're talking about buying mowers or grounds equipment, I want their feedback, from the mechanics, what's giving you trouble? What brand do we want to try, or what brand is working? What manufacturer is working? That kind of thing. So just making them feel valued. And I try to buy them stuff. That always helps. Shirts, hats, goodies, of course, that's tough to do at a public school district. You have to kind of find ways around some of the policies sometimes, but I can say that now. I'm leaving. They're going to catch me. And feed them as much as I can too, those kind of things. But that's all the easy stuff. It's really just valuing their input and expertise.
I think, and a lot of that, I think you've done probably a lot of going into your wallet and supporting your team that way, because like you say, public sector definitely has its limitations. And I think that's something that a lot of people's teams don't necessarily realize or know. And I know for a fact with you, just because I know who you are and the type of person you are, that if it came to having to reward or recognize your team for something they did, you probably were the first person to throw your money in the cap to make sure that they were recognized.
There's been a few times, yes.
Yeah, and I told Scott he could take this, but I'm gonna have one series of questions right here, and then he could go back to taking over, because I want him to take over this thing. I keep saying, take over this thing, Scott, and then you get these guests that are just amazing, that I just have some dirt on, that I just got to dug up and get it out of the way. But Jim, I've told you this on more than one occasion. In a previous life, I was part of a survey team that we surveyed over 5,000 school districts, talking about an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, the importance of preventive maintenance. And I'm not sure that you knew that when I told you where you were rated, but you were in the top 10 preventive maintenance performing school districts in the country out of over 5,000. Right? Well, 26,000 schools, 5,000 were surveyed. You're in the top 10. And I would put you up probably in the top 10 of all the schools. So here's a couple of questions. Now you're on your way out, because now we can know what the secrets are.
Yeah.
Do you feel you had any unfair competitive advantage to get in that situation of being a top performing PM? Did you have a whole bunch of money given to you every year? Did you have more staff than anybody in the world? Like, is there any reason why you were the top 10 that someone else, a Scott Dobson or someone else, we didn't measure Scott, so I'm sure he's in the top 10 too, but just he's here. But is there any reason why any school USA couldn't implement an effective PM system to minimize catastrophic failure and maximize learning environment and just environment in general?
No, that's a great point. Great question. I would say no, as long as you have the support of your cabinet and board. I mean, that's what it takes. I'm changing the subject a little bit or going down a rabbit hole here until I showed up at Myrtle Beach at the embassies. What was it? Kingston Plantation at the party out by the pool, and somebody come rushing up to me and was all over. I'm like, well, I don't even know what you're talking about here. So that's the way I found out. But years ago, when I kind of realized that's the way to go, PMs are the way to go. That's what you need to focus on, or at least a lot of your focus should be on. I had that conversation with the current superintendent, my current boss, who's still my boss to this day, and let him know, this is the direction we're going. Now it took, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years to get to a point where we were more proactive than reactive, but it took their backing from a financial standpoint to be able to get there. That's the most important piece. I mean, we can all do it. Scott has probably already done it. I mean, we've given presentations together. I know what he's got going on there too. It's something special as well, but it takes the support of the superintendent and team cabinet.
Yeah. And I mean, the software is such a small piece of it, but you said 3, 4, 5 years, which dug right into I've got 3 questions total here, Scott. Here it comes. Number 2 is, you said 3, 4, 5 years. Were there any points in that time where your team and you got discouraged? And if so, what did you do to get, it's kind of like weight loss, right? When you're on a weight loss plan, all of a sudden you hit this plateau, you hit this spot where you just don't seem to be going any further along, and you get completely discouraged, right? But you have to have a breakthrough moment. Did you have any points in which, did you just were you like the little engine that just kept puffing up the mountain? Or did you have those break points that kind of was like, oh, this isn't going to work, or this is too overwhelming? And if you did, what did you do to get past that? Because I think that's something a lot of people experience. Everybody has the best intentions.
Yeah. Fortunately, we kept on it. What was a challenge is just the software side. Mm-hmm. I mean, we knew, when I say we, my technicians, that they're experts that I talked about before, they knew what they needed to do, and we started doing it. Now, capturing that information, and my lights just went down. Sorry. Hang on.
Technical difficulties.
I wasn't moving enough.
Gotta love the motion sensor.
Yeah. So relying on them just to do the work that they needed, that they knew they needed to do. The hardest part was just during that transition period is we're still doing all the work orders, the reactive stuff that we hadn't got to a point with the preventive maintenance to where we still weren't having the breakdowns and everything that the preventive maintenance would help us out with. So I don't know if that makes sense, but we kept chugging through it. And getting everything in school dude at the time and getting all that set up was probably the biggest part. And part of that was because I needed another administrative assistant that I hadn't been able to hire yet to help with that.
Yeah, well, that's good. No, I think that's just a mindset that you have to go into it, that this is gonna. I mean, and this is 15 years ago. So, I mean, the process, the technology process is different. It's easier, but there's still, even with ease, it's just an overwhelming amount of work that you're going to uncover. One of the things that I see people seeing challenge with is that they're worried that they're going to show failure because they just can't get to all the work.
Yeah.
Right? What you said, you're doing reactive work, which is already stacking your workload every day. And then you've got your PM that you're putting into it with additional work, and you're going, there's no way we can get to all of this stuff. And a lot of people, that's where that plateau hits. They get to a certain point where they just have this mountain of work in front of them. And they go, we're going to fail. And it's like, well, you're going to fail if you don't do it, right? Getting that mindset on it. So no, that's amazing. And hats off and congratulations, because you were doing it. You were doing PM when people were talking about it. You were doing it. And that's pretty cool. And you've stayed on it. And I think Scott would agree that you've probably been influential in his professional growth, so he can be the next part of the top 10 club. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Those are my questions. I'll probably have more, but those are the ones I got so far.
Yeah. And part of that too, sorry to belabor this, but
no, let's keep going. I like this.
No, yeah, it's perfect.
When you're talking about it, and Scott's an HVAC guy, so he knows that's, well, in my opinion, that's probably, if not the, one of the most important preventive maintenance programs you can have is the HVAC. That's your big money equipment and, all that. But we outsourced for many, many years some of that PM work, changing filters and belts and lubing and that kind of stuff. And we're doing that up until probably 4 or 5 years ago. And I say thankfully now, the companies that we were using couldn't get help, couldn't get it done on time, and we took it all in house. So we transitioned. They were doing it all. And then we only had them doing our larger secondary schools, and then we dropped that to only the high schools, and now we're doing it all. So that helped with that transition between the reactive and proactive.
For our listeners, to be able to grab more of a concept, how big is Park Hill? How many buildings and how many students?
We have right at 2 million square feet under roof. And the interesting question is how many buildings? What's your answer to that, Scott?
Yep.
Talking about how many schools,
I just
how
care
many
about
facilities, because
Yep.
I count press boxes and everything. So anyway, about 26, 27 buildings.
How many students?
About 12,000 students.
Perfect. No, that's a good sized district for sure.
We just built our 12th. We just built our 12th elementary that will open this fall.
That's awesome. And I was privileged enough to go on a tour of that facility a few months ago or weeks ago. It's been at this point, and talk about probably one of the nicest elementary schools I've ever seen, much less across the country, definitely in Kansas City. I think that the thought process that was put into that school, I think your team deserves a huge round of applause, and your community for entrusting you guys to design that facility, because the amount of attention to detail in there was phenomenal. And durability is kind of probably the big thing that stood out to me. Is I think that school is meant to be there for the 30 years and last all 30 of those years without having to have major upgrades, except for standard replacements of parking lots and roofing and mechanical systems. The bulk of that building is going to be there forever, and it is super nice. So hats off.
Thank you for that.
I think it'd be cool at Jim, because Scott's getting more organized. He's editing. He's putting show notes and everything. I'd love to put in the show notes on your way out. And this is serious, and this is sad in some ways, because there are good facility professionals that when they're asked how many buildings, or they're asked how many students, or how many square feet, or how many bathrooms, or how many urinals, sinks, windows, doors, or any number of pertinent information that they should have, in their head, they don't know. And you can't manage what you can't measure, right? And so I'd love to see the Jim Rich bullet points of knowledge, what you should have, and we'll put it in the show notes of, like, if you're a facility professional, don't ever go to the grocery store or school committee meeting without knowing these things, because it's important, right? If you don't know how many kids you're serving, are you really doing it for the kids? If you don't know how many buildings you're managing, how do you send your people to go do the work? And I think that there are, and I think I've been in this business 28 years. I think that's a great question that you asked, the question of how many buildings you have. And I think you should, and I know you know all of your buildings, but I think it's important for people to say, we have X number of curriculum focused buildings and then X number of other buildings. And the reason being is the communities, the taxpayers, the people around us, they only see the buildings and spaces in which we teach. They don't see the spaces in which we manage, which is in a lot of cases a significantly different number and a lot higher square footage than what people would even know. So I'm just giving you a 10-day task. What are the things that and think about it, doesn't need to be now, is like in the next couple of days, like what are questions that people asked you that you're glad you knew the answer to? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Cool. I love doing these types of challenges. It's fun.
Man, homework.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's kind of spurred a thought. I mean, the building I'm sitting in, and Scott's been here. Well, have you been here, Peach? I don't know.
No, I haven't. I was invited. And I think something happened with a weather event. Might have been when I went out to Scott's and he brought me to 25 below, and they were taking snow off the sidewalk with leaf blowers, just trying to get me in the building.
Our public, whatever bond, it would have been a 2017 bond. And this building and our transportation facility was front and center on the list of things in that bond. And people knew what they were voting for, I guess is my point. It wasn't something that was hidden, in the other category. And extremely supportive, which surprised me. Usually when you're talking about support or district office facilities, the public usually is not on board with that at all. And we had just the opposite here. Because I'm sure all the superintendents do the same thing when getting ready to try to pass a bond. The superintendent, what we call our road, he goes on his road show every PTA and every civic group he can get into, everything, and does the same presentation and shows them, what they're going to be voting for. And the feedback that he got during those presentations for the support services facility was really nice.
Yeah. Well,
Thanks to our patrons.
it goes to, and this is widespread across the country right now, where tax overrides and things aren't passing. And the reality in life is, and we learn this in sales, is people buy on emotion and they justify on logic. And so the logic is the information, right? The logic is the numbers. The logic is all of what it is that you're going to get from that emotional decision of, do we want this space or don't we want this space, and what's the impact going to look like, and then what is that ongoing need. And I think and I just think that having that information readily available shows that we do. I mean, I don't question any professional education. They're doing the best job that they possibly can. I think that we can just do a better job showcasing it and showing it for people and making them putting them up on a pedestal as the unsung heroes that they are. And that's just, and I only do this because I'm in a hotel in Arlington, Texas at an event, 780 people. And I asked someone that I know and I trust and I know that he's good in his job. And I said, how many kids do you have? And, as short as saying two, like his own kids, he just kind of looked at me. He's like, what? I was like, how many kids do you have? Like, how many kids are in the district? And it was a tough question for him. And he had been there for a number of years. Once you forget that's but you can figure out your total average number of square foot per kid. You can do all sorts of different things if all you have is a square foot under roof and the number of kids. And we need to have that stuff. But you'll get the other 18 bullet points to Scott, and it will go down in history as Jim Rich's Nuggets of Knowledge in the Show Me Mo podcast time capsule.
Yeah, I like the name of it right there. You already named it. That's perfect.
Bingo.
You're hitting on something a little bit that I'm always curious on and trying to figure out how to improve upon, is getting that good relationship with the board and the good relationship with your administrators. So what are some tricks of the trade on that one?
Well, thankfully, I haven't had to deal with the board much. We changed. It's been many, many years ago. I don't think that's me doing that, is it?
It's not me.
It's all good.
It's air traffic control Dobson.
Up until several years ago, I would have to do a lot of presentations to the board. Everything I took to the board, I'd have to present. They went to a model a few years ago of they call it a 2-read model. So everything that reaches the threshold for me to take to the board takes 2 board meetings to get it approved. The first one is just a introduction. Again, it's all on paper. I don't have to present anything. They read through it. If they have questions about it or anything before the next board meeting, I would answer those questions for them. And then the second board meeting it's on the consent calendar. So I don't even have to present anymore unless it's something huge, like a transportation contract or something that's, $10 million a year or something. But, so as far as my relationship with the board, it's more kind of on the outskirts, if you will. I mean, I know them all. I go to every board meeting, they know who I am. And there's been times where I've had to go up and answer questions or something like that, in a board meeting, but not very often. Relationship with administrators, can be challenging sometimes, as we all know. Some, probably the ones that are more challenging are the ones that think it's their building and not the district's building, and they want to do everything their way. And again, fortunately, well, it's been back and forth over the years, but right now anyway, the folks that oversee or supervise the principals kind of get it. It's a district-wide decision, district-wide standardization, depending on what you're talking. I just had a pointed conversation with our assistant superintendent for academic services and talking about furniture. Everybody wants a different piece of furniture. And we can't do that. That doesn't make any sense for a school district to do that. So she formed a group. They figured out this is what we want in a standard classroom. And I said, you're going to have to back me on this. She goes, what are you talking about? I said, because they're going to go over my head. I'm going to tell them no. And they're going to come to you and say, this is what we want. And so far she has done that. So it takes that kind of relationship with those folks to be able to do with the more difficult principals. But a lot of the principals are great. They get it. I mean, Scott, I'm sure you have the same, it's the 80-20 rule,
Oh, yeah.
And
I love your
I've had good
idea.
relationships with them and the assistant principals as well. We have assistant principals in every building now.
I like that a lot. On the furniture, it's a great mindset. That's what we're trying to work on in our district currently, is into this fall is going to be assembling those teams and trying to come up with a standardization for elementary and secondary.
Yep.
So I might be hitting you up for some of that information, but you'll be gone.
He won't be. He's not going anywhere. He's going to be here. You just won't have to go to his office every day.
That's right. I'm keeping my number, so I've had it too long to change it.
So I tell people all the time, I've had my phone number since 1991. It's in my book. It's on my business card. If you can't find me, nobody can.
Yeah.
I'm on the wrong side of the grass.
All right, got a couple hard ones here that I'm gonna tee you up for. What is something you wish you knew sooner in your career?
Oh my gosh.
Me.
Yeah.
I agree with that one.
I was
Wealth of knowledge in that head.
I was
Wealth of
exposed
knowledge.
to Peach right from the get-go, but probably didn't know him very well back then.
I was watching from the sidelines, cheering you on and admiring all of your amazing work, but I was up in the Northeast back in those days.
Probably, I mean, right after I started, I didn't realize the extent to the political side of things. Not my favorite thing to deal with. You know, we all have to do it. I don't care what role you're in. Even the technicians have to deal with that to a certain extent. So that's been frustrating without getting too political, I guess. Didn't and don't necessarily agree with the political climate of public education. I guess, is that a PC way of saying it?
I think that works.
And that's been difficult over the years of some of the decisions that the district that I know, love, live in, my kids taught in or teaching in, and grandkids are going to now, that I have a hard time with some of that stuff. I'll just leave it at that. Don't want to get into detail on that. But as far as the work itself, again, I've already said it. I'm no expert in the trades, so relying on the experts. Hopefully, I've learned a little bit about enough to be dangerous in everything, but I'm still learning from those guys on a daily basis. I'm not sure I answered your question very well.
No, you did great.
No,
I
you
think
did.
it's super cool, and it's so impressed with you and how you feel about your district, knowing that you live in the community, I think, as well, right? And then you've worked there. All your kids went there, and now your grandkids. That is super cool. That's super cool.
It's been pretty cool when I'm walking buildings, two things, either during the day when school's going on and being able to peek in my grandkids' classrooms and wave at them, and they get all excited and come running down the hall and hug me. Or when they're not in there, I leave them little notes on their desk, stuff like that. Anyway, side note.
Is, oh my gosh, that's super special. And I'm fortunate enough to work here where my kids go as well. So it's pretty cool. What is the biggest tidbit of information for a guy like me who still has a lot of years trying to keep going the next generation and trying to keep the next generation going behind me? What's that big nugget of advice?
I guess I'll lean back to what a couple of things I've already said, building that team, creating that atmosphere and, that work environment that people enjoy, because we know we can't pay them what they're worth, unfortunately. And that's kind of the only tool that we have to keep them interested and engaged in public school work. Again, relying on and engaging the experts and the different trades and keeping them on board. Custodians are you over custodians, Scott?
Yes. Yep. Indirectly, but yep.
Yeah, that's they're a challenge too. I mean, a lot of turnover there, and trying to keep them engaged has been one thing. And that's, hopefully the core certification, I opened that up to our head and assistant head custodians here, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. And they have just flocked to that. They love it. And, getting that knowledge from all the other classes besides custodial in the core certification process has been great for them. Yeah, just keeping them engaged and trying to get them out of their comfort zone a little bit when you need to, because everybody gets stagnant in their job. Well, not everybody. A lot of people get stagnant in their job, and they're doing the same routine day after day after day. So mixing it up a little bit, it's always good too.
Makes a lot of sense. What are you going to miss most?
I'm old, man. So being around all you youngsters every day, that keeps me young. And, the guy, Jeremy, that's taken over for me when he got the job, and I wasn't involved in that at all. They didn't involve me in the process. I'm thinking, God, man, he's young. He's young for this job. And then I realized he's 1 year younger than I was when I started here. So he's not that young, I guess. But yeah, just interacting with all the people, because I won't have that anymore. Just be me and my wife, which I love my wife. Great to be around, but 24/7 might be a little different.
60
What are you
days.
not going to miss?
60 days. You know,
That political stuff that I mentioned before, that's just, I don't have any patience for that anymore.
how old were you when
true.
you got in? How old were you when you started getting into this?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you made that just hit a chord with, you know, these guys are young, and these men and women that are entering into, you know, Scott's young, right? But we look at this, and this used to be an old man sport, right? And I'm saying that fully knowing that people are going to say that's the wrong way to say it. But until about 10 years ago, 99% of the people that were in facility management and education were men, and they were older. What we're seeing is an amazing transition to different ages, men and women, everybody, every different type of person could be coming into the environment that is great. And it's what we're finding in a lot of cases is the age part isn't, these young ones are smarter than us. The experience they don't have, they're smarter than us. That's why I find it important to have older, seasoned, if you will, leaders to leave that legacy of, hey, these are the things that are going to come down the pike for you. Be prepared. Your intelligence is far superior than I'll ever. I mean, look, I got 2 kids. One just graduated high school, one's in 1st grade. I always say my 18-year-old, he was probably smarter than me, but he was probably smarter than me earlier than I gave him credit for. But by 10 years old, he had more intelligence than me. He could consume way more content. My 7-year-old, he's already there, right? And so, but as far as experience, hands-on learning experience, like that's, you know, what happens when people come to you and want to look for this is what you need to be looking for. I think that's
Yeah.
the big difference. So
Yeah, we had something like that just at lunch today. I was eating lunch with Jeremy and Joe Rogers, who's taking Jeremy's spot. And it's something stupid. I don't even remember what it was now. Something stupid. And they were talking about it. I said, why don't you guys do this? And you're like, oh my, yeah, that's why you've been here 19 years. That's why you know that. I'm like, yeah, it was just something.
I
But
get
going back to Scott's question, people ask me, or Jeremy, he comes to me and says, what do I need to know? I don't know. I mean, you know how to deal with construction projects, and you know how to deal with the electricians and plumbers, et cetera, et cetera. It's stuff that just comes up that you've experienced before sometime in your career that you have an answer for. How do you articulate that to somebody?
Yeah. What do you need to know as an operations professional education? What you need to know is there's gonna be a lot of stuff you don't know. There's going to be a lot of things that you are not prepared for, and you need to figure out how to get prepared quickly and find resolve and result for your people. That's really that's the excitement of this occupation, right? Even a well thought plan, top 10 PM, you never know what you're going to find. I mean, you can't. A couple of facility professionals, we'll sit around the fire a couple times a year, and we'll have you can't make this ass up. Right, because in my journeys, I hear all the stories, and in their journeys, they experience many of the stories. I'm like, you won't believe this. I mean, the best one to date was a home ec teacher, and he put a work order in because his tie was stuck in the dishwasher, and the facility director came out, and the tie wasn't just attached to the dishwasher; the tie was attached to his neck. And he said, "You didn't think to use your phone to call me? You entered in a work order?" And he goes, "That's the process you told me to do. I just want to get out of here." And he was literally stuck hanging off the dishwasher like this. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But I mean, your life is loaded with stories of experience of things that you're not prepared for. Most of the world goes to work 9 to 5, and they've got a schedule of planning of a day, and it very rarely goes outside of that scope. And the scope of work is you do the job that needs to get done for every kid every day to have the best experience that they can. Right?
Yeah, funny. My wife and I were down. This is last year. Sometime we were sitting in our lake house, and we'd had some windows installed, and she didn't like something about it, and she kept questioning me, and I finally got fed up. I said, "Do you realize this is what I do every day? Every day I'm doing this." And she kind of looked at me and shook her head. She's like, "Okay, I'm good with it." So,
Here's I keep saying my last one, but here's my last one. Is there in your career, and I have a couple every once in a while that I think about, but is there anything that you wish someone had asked you before you left, a question about you, whether personal or professional, or a situation where you were like, man, I wish someone just asked that question about me or about my team or about, you may have been asked all the questions, and this is a tough one, but is there one thing that I sit and I'll tell you what mine is. So mine is very rarely, less than 5 times in my entire career, have people ask me why I'm as committed as I am to do the job that I do, to go to the places that I go, to talk to the people that I do. Very rarely.
And the amount of hours you dedicate.
It's because they all know why I do it, but it's never asked. Do you have any of those questions that you wish someone had asked that we can get out of the way and make sure that the world knows?
Well, very similar actually, and it was coming to my mind. I don't care where I was in my career, even prior to Park Hill and my other jobs, UPS and Laidlaw. I'm the type of person that I'm all in. I'm all in. Wherever I am, this is the best damn district, the best company, the best whatever, and I'm going to make it better. I'm going to continue that journey, if you will, and continually improve wherever I am. Park Hill has been more of that. Again, like I said before, my kids went all 13 years here. I've lived here all my adult life, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm really all in at Park Hill. That same question. Why? Why are you so dedicated and so, here lately, emotional about leaving Park Hill? Because I can't, if I start talking about leaving and what it's meant to me, I can't get 30 seconds in before I'm a blubbering idiot and I'm just crying and whatever. That's just the way I am. But that's the question: is why are you so committed? It's just the answer is that's just the way I am. That's my makeup. I've got to be 100% committed to what I'm doing, whatever that is. I don't know.
No, that's good. I think that's good, and I think that that's a good one to want to share with people, and I think it's one that others should strive for. I think anyone that's in whatever occupation, they should wake up every day and say that I have the best damn job I could ever ask for, and I'm all in. I tell my teams that work with me all the time. It's like, you're either all in or you're not. There's no kind of, there's no sort of, there's no, well, on Mondays I am, but Tuesdays not so much. We got to be all in, and we got to be all in, and we got to understand why. Right?
No place I've ever been has just been a job to me. I guess that's a good way to describe it.
Well, Jim, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to sit down with us. Your knowledge, just your dedication to your students, your staff of Park Hill, and for the state for that. You've done so much for our state organization, for MSPMA. You've done so much locally. That from the bottom of my heart, thank you for making everything better in my eyes. So, and then being a mentor to me and helping me throughout the years. There's been a lot of things. I got a little ways to go left in this career, but we're going to continue to push at it and do the best we can. And thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. And I'm gonna echo that, but I'm gonna tell you that it has been an honor for the last, it's been at least 15 years that I have either followed you from a distance and admired the work that you did, or working closer with you in the board. And I'm a better person and a more knowledgeable and understanding person in the industry because of the work that you do and the knowledge that you shared. So I truly appreciate it. I know you're not going anywhere. I got your number, and I'm not going to let you go anywhere regardless. But thank you, sir. You've done an amazing job for your community, for your kids, and ultimately, selfishly, you've done a lot for me. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Josh, if you're happen to be close to Kansas City this Friday night, we're having a little get together.
I think it's a little bit of a hike. I got to go from Dallas home, prepare for Kansas. But I would have loved to. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to take a rain check, and you and I'll be in Kansas City plenty this year, and we will surely get together and raise a glass and celebrate in person the next chapter of what's in store for Jim Rich when he grows up, and the legacy you've left for your team, for them to continue and carry the torch. So hats off, my friend, and enjoy Friday night.
Appreciate it. Am I going to see you there, Scott?
I will be there. I will be there.
Hopefully you got the invites.
I did.
Show Me Mo representation will be there.
Yeah, there you go.
I might even rock the Be Awesome shirt, actually.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This has been another episode of the Show Me Mo School Facility Podcast. Again, if you get any value from the show, share it with the ones that you know. Thank you.
See you guys.
Thanks, Jim.
Are we going?